What is up, everybody? Back with another top 10 here today, and with this one I'm going to be giving y'all my 10 favorite modern albums by classic thrash metal bands. So with this, really tough to put together because, as many of you know, a lot of the classic bands have been on an absolute roll lately, releasing really good album after really good album. And as far as recent, I'm counting that as last 15 years, so got to be 2006 or newer to qualify for this list, and I'm not going to do any more than 2 per band for this. But still, a ton of amazing choices to go through and narrow down here. We'll give honorable mentions at the end, as I usually do. And yeah, here we go. Starting off the list at number 10 is going to be the most recent album from Flotsam Jett, Blood in the Waters. So I questioned putting this on because it's super new, came out this year, but I think it's that good. Just amazing production, amazing sound. The riffs are fantastic. The solos, they still got the original guitar player Michael Gilbert in the band right now. Original vocalist Eric A.K. Knutson, however his name's pronounced. But he's one of the best singers in thrash. Can't quite hit those high notes he was hitting back in the 80s, but his voice still sounds really cool. And Ken Mary on the drums. The dude is a freaking machine. He drummed with a lot of people in the 80s, you know, most notably I'd say Chastain and Chris Impellitteri, the shred guitarist, but the drumming is what stands out the most on this album. The dude is just incredible on here. Looking at some of these songs, some favorites I would go with the title track, Burn the Sky, A Place to Die, The Walls, which is a bit more melodic, but amazing, really catchy. The guitar work is just fantastic, but overall, really good album I had to include here. Blood in the Water, Flotsam Jett, number 10.
Everything around me ignites my rage, a burning with animosity.
Next up at number 9, I'm going to go with Exhibit B, The Human Condition by Exodus from 2010. So really good album here. I'm a big fan of all 3 of the Rob Dukes era Exodus albums. Shovelheaded Kill Machine is actually my favorite Exodus album of all time, but that just missed the cut for this list. It came out in 2005, and my cutoff was 2006, but this album, pretty similar feel to it, just really heavy, aggressive, brutal thrash. Rob sounds awesome on the vocals. Lee Altus and Gary Holt is a fantastic duo, just amazing riffs and solos all over this album. Tom Hunting is a freaking awesome drummer, one of my favorites of all time. Looking at these songs, you know, the Ballad of Leonard and Charles is fantastic to open it up. And probably I'd go with Downfall and Class Dismissed. A Hate Primer is my favorites on here, but a lot of really good stuff throughout the whole album. Super heavy, brutal, aggressive thrash. Exhibit B by Exodus, my number 9. Woo! Coming in at number 8 is the 2010 self-titled album by Annihilator. I freaking love this band. Jeff Waters is easily one of my top 5 favorite metal guitarists of all time. Really, it's an absolute shame that he's not more well-known in the mainstream because he might be the most talented guitar player in all of metal. You just listen to his solos, his melodies, his riffs, and it is freaking mind-blowing, amazing. The melodies are beautiful. The riffs and solos are just scorching. You know, he makes these solos sound so effortless the way he does it, and smooth and just perfect. Yeah, just a great guitar player, and this album is really heavy at times, maybe their heaviest ever, and but there is still some of that typical, just beautiful, classic Jeff Waters melody that, if you're a fan of Annihilator, you know what I'm talking about. You know, that can especially be heard in the trend right from the beginning, and then after that melody at the start of the song, it transitions into a super fast, face-melting guitar solo, which it's just incredible. That song overall is fantastic. And looking at some of these others, Coward is great. Ambush, really heavy and fast and aggressive, which, you know, you can say that about most of this stuff. And there's also a really good cover of Romeo Delight by Van Halen. So you got a GOAT in metal here, Jeff Waters, covering maybe the best hard rock guitar player ever, Eddie Van Halen. So that's super cool to hear. And yeah, really good album here that I highly recommend. Annihilator 2010, my number 8. Next up at number 7, I'm going to go with Titans of Creation by Testament. So this one came out last year and it's freaking incredible. It was one of my top albums of 2020. The lineup on here is ridiculous. Alex Skolnick and Eric Peterson, fantastic duo on the guitar. Alex, such a great freaking player, one of the best in metal. And Gene Hoglan on the drums is a machine back there. Of course, he used to be in Death and a bunch of other bands, but, you know, he's been in Testament for a while now, and he is incredible. Steve DiGiorgio, another one of the best freaking bass players in metal here. And Chuck Billy's voice has held up really well over the years. And looking at these songs, a lot of really good ones. The drumming, as I said, from Gene is fantastic on all this stuff. World War III, Dream Deceiver, Children of the Next Level, Ishtar's Gate is fantastic. But top to bottom, really killer album here. Testament does have several that were in contention for this list, but I think this one is their best of the last 15 or so years and one of their best ever, so makes the list here at number 7 for me, Titans of Creation.
Millions of detachments from myself, I come from my honest memory. Instant interfering from my body function, distracted from.
Coming in at number 6, I'm going to go with Agony of Death by Holy Moses from 2008. So Holy Moses, as I've said multiple times on the channel, is a criminally underrated thrash metal band from Germany. Some of the best German thrash there is. I have previously ranked them my favorite band ever of any type of metal from Germany. So a huge fan of this band, and Sabina Klassen is pretty much the only constant member from the beginning. There was an album in '94 where she only did some backing vocals and like lead on one song. But other than that, she's been the lead vocalist on all the albums, and her voice is super aggressive and brutal. She was the first girl to be singing in that super harsh guttural style back in the mid-'80s, so really cool there, and her voice has held up really well over the years. Michael Hankel is one of the guitar players on this album. He's incredible. He was in a band back in the late 80s, early 90s from Germany called Erosion, which is some cool, underrated thrash as well. But really good guitar work. The production's amazing. This album overall just has a really cool, kind of dark, apocalyptic atmosphere to it. So it sounds really cool with that. Looking at some of these songs, Imagination, Alien Nation, World in Darkness, and I'd probably go with Schizophrenia are a couple of my favorites. But overall, top to bottom, this freaking album is incredible. So if you don't know it, go check it out. Agony of Death, Holy Moses, number 6. Next up at number 5 is The Dream Calls for Blood by Death Angel. I don't have the album, but I do have a really cool pick that I got at one of their shows back in 2016. Love that artwork with the wolves on the front on the album cover. And, you know, this album is just super heavy, brutal, aggressive. Death Angel is just incredible. Another pretty underrated band in thrash. Most of their stuff is fantastic. Love the guitar playing from Rob Cavastani. He's got some of my favorite tone, and, you know, his guitar playing, just that tone is so thick and amazing. The riffs are fantastic. Mark Osageda, another guy whose freaking voice has held up incredibly over the years. You know, Death Angel is a few years younger than a lot of these bands, because when they started back, you know, the first album came out in '87, the Ultraviolence, you know, they were all teenagers when that came out. So really impressive. They're still going strong today. Looking at these songs, Left 4 Dead to open it up is fantastic. The title track, one of my favorite Death Angel songs ever. Son of Morning is great. And probably, I would say, Caster of Shame are my favorites. But again, most of the stuff on here is fantastic. Just killer thrash. Go check it out if you haven't heard it yet. Just love most of Death Angel stuff, as I said. But this album is one of my top, like, 3 favorites ever by them. So, yeah, here pretty high up at number 5, The Dream Calls for Blood, Death Angel.
They bark at Lady Justice and blindfolded her so she can't see the erosion of the people's trust of what will come to be an FDIC-assisted suicide.
Coming in at number 4 is Endgame by Megadeth. So I know y'all were expecting this one. Maybe you thought it was going to be number 1, but I think 4 is a good spot for it. Freaking fantastic album. In my top 5 Megadeth albums of all time. First one with Chris Broderick, who is amazing on guitar, shred machine. Really, you just listen to his solos going back and forth with Dave, like especially on the song This Day We Fight, just mind-blowing, face-melting stuff. This is maybe the heaviest, most aggressive Megadeth album of all time. Just amazing from start to finish. Dave is a great songwriter, obviously. Probably my favorite songwriter and one of my favorite people in metal of all time. Sean Drover on the drums is great. And James Lomenzo on the bass, who I've been saying I want him to come back to Megadeth. We'll see what happens, but he's really good on here. Looking at these songs, as I said, This Day We Fight's amazing. The opening instrumental song, Dialectic Chaos, fantastic. The guitar work from Dave and Chris, incredible. Some other favorites on here, you know, I like all of it, but I would probably go with 44 Minutes, Bite the Hand, Bodies, title track, Head Crusher. Really, I'm just listening to every song because it's amazing. Just super great album. I'm sure everybody's heard by now, but if you haven't, go listen to it. Endgame, Megadeth, my number 4. Next up at number 3 is Ironbound by Overkill. Freaking amazing band here. And there was a lot of good choices here with Overkill because they are one of the most consistent bands of all time. So a lot of their releases over the last 15 years have been really good. But I do think Ironbound from 2010 is their best of the recent material. Killer stuff. Ron Lipnicki on the drums is a freaking machine. He was in the band from about 05 to 2017, but the drumming on this is incredible. Dee Verney's bass, you know, you can always hear it pretty well in the mix. He's got a good, distinct tone and sound. Bobby Blitz on vocals. His voice is held up really well from the beginning. Still sounds amazing. And Dave Linsk on guitar is a really good player. The riffs, solos, melodies, everything on this album is great. But looking at some of these songs, some favorites, I would go with The Green and the Black. The title track is really amazing. Bring Me the Night, probably my favorite on here. Really cool music video with that one as well. And The Goal Is Your Soul, a super cool, dark, creepy atmosphere song, but great freaking album. Overkill, you can't go wrong with any of their stuff, but I'd say Ironbound is definitely one of their best of all time. And here at number 3 for me, Next. Coming in at number 2 is Tales of the Weird by the band Paradox. So these guys are criminally underrated. They started back in the mid-'80s. Their 1990 album, Heresy, I listed as one of the top 50 best thrash albums of all time. It was pretty high up there, at like in the teens somewhere, but incredible band. This album here is absolutely fantastic. You know, the musicianship all around is top tier. The main guy of the band is the vocalist and rhythm guitar player. His name is Charlie Steinhauer. He's been on every album. Amazing riffs. His voice is still held up after all these years. Looking at the other guys in the band, Christian Munzner on lead guitar is freaking incredible on this album. Just sweet picking, technical guitar shred all over the album. Very impressive. And the drummer, who is freaking amazing on here, his name is Daniel Bold. But yeah, great musicianship, great songs from top to bottom. This album should be a lot more well-known. I'm sure most of y'all haven't heard it. If you have, I'm very impressed because it's borderline obscure, I'd say. Looking at the best songs on it that I wrote down, I'd probably say Day of Judgment for sure is my favorite. Just incredible, amazing riff. The solo is ridiculous. Slash Dead and probably The Downward Spiral are my favorites, but top to bottom, incredible album. Tales of the Weird, Paradox. Go freaking listen to it. And real quick, a couple honorable mentions I want to list through. I'm not going to give any more by bands I've already said because most of the bands that were on this list have multiple really good modern albums. So yes, I agree. All the bands I listed have others that are really good as well. But some more, you know, Left for Dead by Laz Rocket from 2008. Really close to making it. Incredible album. Really good, underrated band again there. Penalty by Perception by Artillery, another one that was pretty close. They've got several recent albums that are really good, and some of their classic stuff, some of the best thrash of all time. World Painted Blood by Slayer from 2009, really good album. And, you know, unironically, I do legitimately think Death Magnetic is a pretty dang solid album by Metallica. I bought it on CD like around the time it came out when I was like 12, so I do enjoy that album. Got to give it an honorable mention. So on to my number 1.
How can there be any logic in biological war? all know this is wrong, but the new world order's beating down the door. Or something needs to be done.
And taking the #1 spot for me has got to be United Abominations by Megadeth from 2007. Just freaking love this album. I did rank it my #4 favorite Megadeth album ever pretty recently, so stands right up there with their all-time classic albums in my opinion. Really, other than the Atule Moaned remake, which I don't really care for, I really love the rest of these songs. The musicianship is top tier. Love the tone and feel of the album. You know, it doesn't matter who Megadeth gets in the band. They're all just amazing musicians. You got Sean Drover on drums, Glenn Drover on the guitar, and this is the only album to feature Glenn on co-lead guitar, but he's really awesome. Of course, he was in King Diamond's band previously, Eidolon as well with Sean. That was the band they had before they were in Megadeth. But also James Lamenza, who I mentioned when talking about Endgame. Hope he comes back to Megadeth. We'll see. He's great on the bass. And Dave, who is just a mastermind songwriter, amazing guitar player. His voice actually still sounds really good on this album, I think. It dropped off a bit after this, but still sounds, you know, pretty much as best as it's ever sounded on this album, I think. But looking at these songs, Sleepwalker to open it up is incredible. Really heavy. The drumming is amazing on that song as well, kind of in the mid part. Some really nice double bass kick. Washington is Next, which I think is a top 10 Megadeth song of all time. I ranked it that like 2 years ago when I did my top Megadeth songs. Never Walk Alone, A Call to Arms, that opening riff, amazing. Title track, Gears of War, another one with just a super heavy, badass riff. You know, it's kind of quiet there in the beginning, then transitions into it. Just super awesome. Blessed Are the Dead is a really good underrated song. Play for Blood as well. Americanistan, You're Dead, and Burnt Ice. So Burnt Ice is an amazing closer, but top to bottom, amazing album here. My #1 modern album by classic thrash metal band, United Abominations, Megadeth. So that does wrap up my list as usual. Let me know what you guys thought and give me your top 10. You know, keep it last 15 years, so 2006 or newer. Always interested to see y'all's picks as well. And until next time, thank you for watching.